Hey, what's happening guys, Whipper here, back with the next painting video. And we're painting the Forest Champion, this time from Barbarians the Invasion. I primed it with a Cobra green paint, which I'm not sure if I'm going to keep using the Cobra, as I tried the grey and it doesn't take paint well. That's not the best for priming. The green's not so bad, as you can see here. But we start off with tanned flesh, because I want to do this one. I've done very light skin so far, the other champions, so I wanted to do something a bit darker. So we're going straight into tan flesh and we're going to keep it there. But we're just going to wash it, obviously, and give us a bit of highlights and lowlights. But the first layer of tan flesh doesn't go on that well because it's so thinned, but that is probably the best way of painting anyway. Because if you do multiple thin layers, you keep all the detail, whereas if you do one thick layer, it just blocks everything out and wrecks it. That's the end of the first layer of tan flesh. Now we move on to fur brown, because she's got a brown, but it's like a pelt on her back. So instead of doing that green like I've done with the capes of the other ones, it would look weird having a green pelt. So doing this brown, I'm going to do all the other accessories green, all the little leather parts, which you'll see later on. But I've done this just as like a bare pelt essentially, wrapped around her back. Then we move on to the green. I've gone with a darker green than what the primer is, but I've thinned it quite well, so it just sort of almost acts like a wash. Not quite. So it just sits into all those recesses and then automatically highlights everything I need, really. And then when I give it the wash, it just highlights that even more and makes it just pop exactly how you would want it to be, which kind of helps a lot. Makes it a lot easier to do because I haven't had to go back and do any highlighting, which is always a plus. And then we move back onto the tan flesh now, give it that second layer. So I wanted to wait for this one to dry first. And as you can see, it blocks it in so much nicer now. And it gives it that full dark tanned flesh look, which is what you need. These models are quite nice models as well. I reckon I could probably not the first two that I've done, because they're very much color orientated to what they are, but I feel like this one and possibly the next one that I do as well, that has the big massive hammer, I reckon they can be used for D&D. So this could quite easily, she could pull off either an elf or wood elf like ranger, or even a human ranger, more likely to be a human ranger since she's human, but you could easily pull that off with her as well. And they're just about the right size. And move on to the inside of the pelt, which I've done with leather brown, as that is generally the colour of an inside of a pelt. That's where leather comes from. But it gets to this point now, you've got to start really being careful how you're painting it, because there's so much paint on the model already, so you don't want to cover up the areas you've already done, because it will just wreck it. Like going over extra bits it's not difficult, but it's time consuming that you don't need to do. It's not really worth doing it. That's leather brown done. Then we move on to oak brown. This is just solely for the a bow. Because I wanted the bow to stand out a lot more compared to the rest of the model, as it's the main weapon. and it was either going to be the oak brown or a very light sort of like bit birchwood colour, but I felt like that would look weird, so I've gone with the oak brown, something dark. The rest of the model's quite light. Apart from this bit, obviously, where I'm using Necromancer's Cloak for quiver, and then onto her hair as well. I felt like dark hair was the way to go. And then we move on to, I believe is the last colour I've used. Is Skeleton Bone. She's got like bone clips around her belt, and like with all the champions, she's wearing a crown, which is a bone crown. I'm not sure if it's meant to be bone. The crown could well, since all the champions are wearing it, it could well be gold. But I think bone just adds to the look a bit more. And it kind of, up against dark hair, it pops out really nicely too. Okay, that's the finished base colours. Then move on to the washes. There's only 2 washes on this. I've got the flesh wash, which I actually use the flesh wash to cover everything other than the green areas, as it works somewhere between soft tone and strong tone for army painters, but it's obviously got that reddy tinge to it, which is perfect for flesh. But it works quite well on furs. Well, since fur brown is a very reddy brown anyway. And we leave that for a little bit to dry off, then back on the army painter's green tone, which is obviously just for the green areas. But this tone, I need to get some more of this because I use this for my orcs as well. And if just doesn't really affect this video, but if you're painting orcs, you paint them yellow originally and then wash them with that green tone. It gives you a really nice tone. Now we've moved on to army painter's matte white, which is just to dot in 2 eyes and add a few highlights to the arrows popping out of the quiver. Just it makes them stand out a little bit more compared to the rest of the model. And then we come back to tanned flesh just to block in most of the flesh again, as that flesh tone is now seeped into all the cracks and crevices, and just paint around it essentially. And it gives you a really nice finish as well. So there's not a lot of areas you can highlight on this. So if you just build it back up to where it was, it looks great. Then we move on to fur brown, which I'm dry brushing back over the pelt. If I paint it back over, it just defeats the point of the wash. There's just a little bit of paint on the brush, wipe it off on a tissue, and then give it a quick drag across the top, and it will just catch all those edges and makes it pop out a bit more. But that is it for the model. And we move on to the standard black base, and I'm just going to leave the green around the rim. This is probably my favourite model from the set I've painted so far. I feel like the other ones were overly complicated for no real reason. Whereas this one, everything makes sense where it is, how it is. And there's no tiny details that you need to deal with. Whereas this one is so perfect and clean. As you can see, it came out quite nicely. I have dotted into iris though, which are not in these photos for some reason. But that's it for this episode, guys. Cheers for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.